Welcome to the State of Mind virtual speaker series. This series has been developed to provide education and support to youth, caregivers, and educators during this challenging time. This series is a collaboration between two local nonprofits, 1 in 5 and MindPeace, and various community mental health partners. We're glad you're here to educate yourself and to learn how to keep your brain in a healthy state of mind.
Good morning. I want to thank you for joining me here. My name is Dan Nelson. I'm a doctor here in Cincinnati, and I was invited here by Nancy Miller from 1 in 5 and Susan Shelton from MindPeace, and just to talk about some things that might be happening for all of us, and hopefully some things maybe I just newly thought about in my own life and might be helpful in your life, and you probably thought about them too. So the fundamental topic here is kind of about loss and adapting to change, but I like to think about things on lots of levels. And so I hope to make this kind of a what's happening now as well as what's the deeper thing. And so I chose the woods. I'm in the woods near Cincinnati, near Lexington, hopefully near wherever you're at, and that there are wonderful places like this in nature you can spend time in. And we're at the dawn of this new day, and you can hear the birds are singing. So I'm glad to be here with you. I just woke up, and it's kind of a special day because when I think about the origin of time in terms of a concept for people, one way to think about a day is the rotation of the earth, right? We experience it when we're more or less in one place as sunrise, the day, sunset, the night, and that cycles as the world spins. But the world is also spinning around the sun, and one period of that is a year, right? And just so happens, just a few hours ago, we went from one side of that journey around the sun to the next. So we were getting closer and closer to the sun. We're now just a few hours from having been the closest to the sun, and we're now going to do a long arc out to the opposite end of that ellipse. It's not a circle, it's a kind of an egg. And the other end of this is called the Winter Solstice. This is the summer solstice. So we just went from days getting longer and longer. We just went through spring where life just jumps up. I've been coming here, and not long ago this was all just empty without leaves. Not empty without the trees, but it felt much more quiet. The life wasn't vibrant. Spring brings on a rebirth of life. And so now our days are getting shorter. We're moving now toward winter where we weren't yesterday. We were moving toward summer, the summer solstice. So I'm going to talk on multiple levels, but I want to have a presence, a mindfulness about mind, body, and spirit. And I'm going to speak at first as if those are different things, but they're not. They're all one thing. Because we can talk about our eyes, our ears, our nose, our mouth, our digestive system, our renal system that filters, our respiratory system, which gives us oxygen. But ultimately, these things don't exist alone. They exist in terms of a totality, a whole body. And the body and mind are not different things. They're completely the same thing. Mind being the function of the brain or the nervous system, but our nervous system goes out to every last little square inch of our sensory system in our skin is part of the nervous system. And even beyond what we can touch, our ears go out a certain distance into nature. Our eyes can go even further. Conceptually, we can go really far. Our ability to imagine. And so when we think about what our body is thought. Thought exists within us. Feelings exist within us. And all is one thing. And then as a spiritual thing, I want to say that there's some kind of spirituality that just exists on the planet. Now, I believe it exists like we would think of water, because water's in all living things. And certainly religion is an attempt to describe this spiritual experience that we all have, all living things have. it's a wish to conceptually understand and commune with it, but it exists beyond that story. Water is in all things, and I don't have to tell a bird or a frog what water is. They know how to get water. Any person knows how to get water. They may have different names for it, but we all use water to live. And if you think of the spirit moving through all of us, all living things, like water does, then we're all connected, not only as people, but as living things. And we're on a shared ship. You can just now see the sun peeking in. The ship being the earth. We're all in this wonderful place that goes around the sun, and all living things share this ship. And so as we come into beings and we begin to understand things with this mind, body, and spirit, as we connect to them, we then, certain things we connect to in importance. How much do we care about those things? In fact, in terms of our being, as we really connect with something, it kind of becomes part of our daily thoughts and feelings. It becomes a part of our overall narrative, our overall way of experiencing the world. And we call that cathexis, that emotional connection. That's something we really feel dear about. The more cathected we are, the more we feel ourselves to be attached to that. And for many of us, that primary attachment being is a parent, or at least someone close to a parent, mother, father, or primary caregiver. That primary caregiver does things. They nurture and protect. And so we become very, very connected to that being that takes care of us. But we're connected to these other people. We're connected. You can use connection and cathexis the same way, really. We're connected to these other people in very important ways. But we also can become connected to our feelings, our concepts, our way of looking at the world. And when those things shift or change, that can mean very dramatic things can be happening. And sometimes that feels good, but sometimes it feels like a loss. It feels like something's taken away. And if it's taken away from what we feel ourselves to be, right, we've lost a part of ourselves. When someone really dear to us dies, we've lost a part of ourselves because our world has changed. And the same thing can happen with our thoughts about the world. The world might have seemed, a lot more safe a few months ago before the pandemic started, COVID-19. We're now through the first kind of phase, if you will, the first wave, as they call it. But it's not done here. We're still going to be in this very connected situation. And with this, I think there's significant losses. There's a bird that just flew like 5 feet from me. He wants to hear the story, he or she. So in the story we write about ourselves, it can be our dreams that get taken from us. Our feelings about safety, our feelings about being healthy. Those are things we connect to as well. Our notion of our future and what our future might mean. So, because of what I've done in my work, some of the work was with Susan and Nancy, has to do with loss. How do we respond when something really important gets taken from us? Whether it's if I lose my dream, let's say someone says you can't do what you really want to do, or I've lost someone, or something that's really important to me. And there's a woman named Elizabeth Kubler-Ross whose genius was to sit down with people who, these people were in the process of losing their lives, and obviously our own life is something we're deeply connected to, the notion of how we live and who we are and how we belong in the world. And she was trying to understand how they respond to the notion of their own passing, their own dying, transition from this life to the life existence, maybe hereafter, what comes next. And she found it profoundly. People initially just pretend it's not happening, what she called denial. But if that perception or threat or the loss persists, if the person for whom we feel a great deal of attachment and connection can't come back, then we go through additional stages of responding, of us coping with this change. And she talks about them being in stages, but they do get all mixed up, and they don't all occur in just one sequence. They can occur in blends and mixings of these things. So after the denial comes anger. No, this can't be happening to me. I want something different. I'm going to be upset that this thing or this person has done something to me. I'm feeling cheated. I'm feeling like uh, a terrible thing has happened, and someone or something has to pay. Anger has that wish to attack, and in some ways that protest can work. If I'm a little kid and somebody takes something I really want and I get really mad about it, if there's that caring person around or someone who listens and wants to make my world better, they might give it back to me, or they might help me get something that is just as important to me. And for little kids, this can be like, a certain food we like. You take it away from, as they say, candy from a baby. The baby gets really upset about it. They protest. But we feel that way when we have something very, very important taken from us. And so we feel this sense of this is horribly unfair. Someone should fix this for me. And when that is not successful, then we try to make deals. We try to say, if I did this differently, if I change this behavior, can I have what is important back to me? Can it be returned to me if I just do this deal differently? And that's called bargaining. And a lot of that's going to happen in our own minds. Sometimes we share it with other people. We can learn about it, but it's almost that wish to turn the clock back. If I could do my life different, would I still be able to have this dream, this person? That's a form of bargaining, using our imagination. And then comes the sadness. And in some ways, I think this is the feeling we maybe want to avoid, because it's one where we hurt down deep. It's where we acknowledge and see just how much this individual or dream or feeling means to us. And we experience loss. And with loss comes sadness. And how will my life ever be the same? And in some ways it won't, because there's been a shift. If you've lost something really dear to you, and it's a part of you in terms of your day-to-day thinking and being with the world, then to lose something of that magnitude leads us to this big sadness. And it's during these stages that we're recalibrating, we're readapting, we're rethinking our lives. What else do we need if not that? Who am I without that? How are my other connections going to change? And some of those connections are even connections with ourselves, how we think about ourselves without this important thing present in our lives. So in the process of this boom, 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 there's the stimulus, I'm losing something important. There's the denial, there's the anger. Then there's, please, can I do something different to still have it? And when those things all kind of erode, we get to this distillation of sadness. And it's in that reworking of who we are and what this now means in my new being, we discover something. We discover, it's almost a rebirth. It's like I'm a new person in that I've been changed, fundamentally maybe. And that's acceptance. That's the final stage, is that when you take that journey of rethinking and refeeling life with this new thing changing in us. Now, as parents, adults, teachers, healers, therapists, these things are happening to us even as they're happening to the people we care about, either within our family, within our circle of friends, or within our profession of wanting to be connected to groups of people and get to know them well. Teachers do this with their students. And I remember as a kid, when you're young, the blends come out, and I remember raising my hand and saying, Mom, right? Mom, instead of teacher, because I was in a room, I was in a space, and this person felt super trustworthy in the same level I trusted my mom. And, this can happen with our spiritual guides too, is there are people who want to help us with the journey. And in wanting to be one of those people who help others with their journey, it's so fundamental to be mindful of our own journey. We use that to understand and to empathize. And there's a distinction from sympathy. Sympathy is I can see something bad's happening for you, and it's not even it's lacking the connection. Um, yeah, it sucks to be you, and you can read about somebody's being in a difficult situation and not necessarily feel a connection, but you can kind of feel sorry for them. But empathy is to get into that space with someone, kind of join them in that space. And I think when people empathize, they feel some of the pain in their own way of thinking about this person, or really being present to what it is to experience what they're experiencing. We begin to experience it too, and it can be painful. It can be hard to be empathetic. It's not an easy space to go to. So what's powerful about that is when you're with someone and you're the one who's hurting and they truly empathize with you, suddenly there are things happening that you're not alone. You're actually experiencing another person with you. You're experiencing a new connection with someone who will go right to the space you're in, right in that moment, the here and now of that moment, what it is for you. And suddenly you're joined in that time and space together. And it's as if for that little blessing, I'll call it, we're together, and we have somebody who's willing to think and feel about the world in that space that we're in. It's really phenomenal when it happens. It's magical. And in some ways, the people we're really close to, that we connect to, the people that we have the deep attachment to or cathexis to, it's because of moments like that, of really feeling like we're here, present in this world, this universe together. So we're in a time of threat and loss, and most of us are being drawn into it on various levels. If you've not even lost a person, you might feel that you've lost the security, or you might have lost the year. You might have lost the year of study, moving toward a degree. You might have lost the connection to your friends at school who you worry about and you want to see, but you've been asked to quarantine. You may feel like you've lost a financial security because jobs have changed. People have lost their jobs. People we care about are upset. They're trying to find a new way to adapt to a very difficult situation. So loss can be on so many levels. It can be in terms of people attachments. It can be attachments to security and safety. It can be an attachment to a dream that I'm pursuing. And is there something helping me with my dream, or is there something standing in my way? So if empathy is that willingness to join someone in that whatever moment they're in, to really be present to them, I will tell you, empathy is how we heal. We're hurt from the loss. We're experiencing a wound, if you will. But to have someone say, I want to be present, you don't even have to know how to help someone to know you want to be helpful to them. So you don't always have to know what to do to come up and care about someone and offer them a support, offer them your presence, your mindfulness, and say, I want to be with you, and maybe think about your situation. And often you don't have to come up with solutions for people, because people are really smart about their lives. Everyone's very smart about their lives. They've learned so much from the moment of arriving here at birth to where they are now. So many of the real solutions for their losses, or how to live, are within them. They're within you. They're within me. To step back and look at that and have an understanding of it takes time. And I think it's really facilitated by another person just going, what's it like to be you? And if a person asks you for answers, honestly, at least in my experience, most of the time I don't have the answers for them. I have some of the answers for me, things I've discovered. But if there's one way that I've learned that's really powerful and really helpful, it's by not trying to make what's helpful for me squeezed into that moment for them. It's almost like trying to put the square peg in a round hole. They ask me a question and I'm thinking, that's a great question. That's worth our thinking about. I want to think about that with you. Because if I throw my answer out about my life, it's sure it may be helpful, but what are the chances they're at just that right place to hear that message and have it be helpful or transformational? And that does happen. It does happen that you know just what to say and it's finely tuned. But I believe that happens through really knowing someone and understanding them in the space that they're in. And that can happen really quickly, but you got to take the time to know them and know yourself and who you both are in this moment, this precious moment of when we share ourselves with one another. And so I guess I'm saying there's not an easy answer. There's not easy answers to who we are, why we're here, and what we feel. There's always the possibility of profound understanding of who each of us are, what's happening to us on so many levels, and then to just share that moment and maybe begin to share details about our own experience from that perspective of profound understanding toward another human being. And what's cool is this stuff all happens all the time. I mean, when we really connect with people, and hopefully that's happened to you, when we really connect with people, we can share something that's profound and important and cherished. And I think when we're experiencing change on the level that we're talking about, profound loss, when you go through those stages of no, it's not happening, or protest, I'm mad about this because I don't want it to happen, or, no, I'm going to think about this and I'm going to come up with a deal. Let's make sure this doesn't happen. I'm going to renegotiate, and that doesn't work. So then you're there with, I am changing, and I'm changing in a way I often don't feel I have control over, right? One of the things with loss is people tend to feel like this is happening to me, not that I'm with what's happening. It's a difference when you perceive the world as happening to you. It's almost like the world in your life is an assault on you, as opposed to something I saw in a film recently, is that the one chance we have, we don't get to decide what life is going to give us, what it's going to throw at us. We do get to decide how we respond to it, how we think about it. In some ways, even how we feel about them, if we imagine our feelings can evolve, because initially feelings can seem like they're just happening to us, but how we think changes how we feel, and we can rethink how we feel about things and begin to feel differently about them, depending on the narrative in our mind, and also depending on how we think about the connections we have. So even when we lose something, there is the reason I brought up spiritual is not just to understand tolerance in other people, which is so important. We tolerate diversity, we tolerate the differences that there are, and we appreciate who people are and what they're going through, and then we can protect everyone in a way that's different. On one level, we protect our own interests, and we protect what's good for us. I want to know I have food and water. I want to know I have shelter. I want to know I have security, safety and security. But then we also extend that out to the people we feel connected to, and that can be our family. And people are thankfully so good at trying to protect their family and make sure their family has the resources they need. But that's not only, we're more than that, right? We're more than that because we can appreciate there's lots of different families, and in appreciating that, they have those same basic needs. And so why not protect their access to that? And we also want, after all that safety and security, we want, as in the words of the American Constitution, we want life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Life is security. I don't want people to be threatening my life. I don't want things like COVID to be threatening my life. I want to work together to reduce the threat as a joining. And families do this, communities do this, countries do this, worlds can do this. How do we think about making life? And actually, It can be well beyond the species, that we protect life in its totality because we're connected to nature. Protecting nature is protecting ourselves. It can also be that we want to protect liberty, which is that freedom to make the choices you want. You recognize how different living is if we all have the liberty of making our own choices, not having someone else or something else choose for us how we live. And if we all appreciate that, we can appreciate that others want liberty as much as we want liberty. It's I guess a sacred right that was recognized long ago, and I think it's so incredible that it's now in words. It's in a fundamental word of who we are as a country, but it doesn't extend only to our country. Liberty is to be cherished world around. And pursuit of happiness, that's no guarantee, right? It's no guarantee you're going to find happiness, but you get to pursue it if you want. So what is that to you personally, the pursuit of your happiness? There should not be obstructions to that if we can design systems that don't interfere with the pursuit of happiness. That's our commitment. So as we evolve, as we adapt, as we're looking for change, we have that as a fundamental substrate of how we decided we want to live. So pursuit of happiness is also that we deserve to have other people help us adapt to change, help us adapt to loss, because that's probably the best way we've ever known in the history of humankind to adapt more quickly and better, is to share our experience and our knowledge and our understanding. So we do that by being present. We do that by how we write about things, the stories we tell, the things we remind each other of. And it's also just through sheer discovery of who we are. So a moment-to-moment loss, like traveling around the sun, is in every moment of my life. I'm getting older. Time moves in one direction. It doesn't move backward. It always moves forward. So I'm getting older. I'm losing things like my youth. I'm losing things like a certain developmental period, because first you're a child and then you're an adult. And as an adult, you can choose to have your own children and you kind of live again through them. And then if they choose, you have that extension of grandchildren and so forth. And it also, there's mindfulness about where we come from. And ultimately, we have shared ancestors. They're in humankind, in all of life. As you go back, we all have a shared legacy of why we're here. The evolution of our DNA, that is the basis of our life and our species, is a certain kind of code that's written into the cells we have. That DNA is related to all these other DNAs. In fact, it's really crazy that because that tree over there is doing things on a basic kind of metabolic level, just on the very tiny cells and how they exist, how they process energy, their DNA is like 60% the same as mine. And when you get up to closely related mammals, it's like 99.5%, 99.8% of the DNA in humans is very similar to species of animals. Specifically the chimpanzee and the bonobo. We have very, very close DNA. We're not very different from those creatures. And if we can step back and see that, then we begin to see how really deeply connected we are to nature, to the other animals and life forms, and also to each other. Because we're all on the same ship that's circling around the sun. And all of us are going through birth, life, and death. It's part of that journey that we're all on. And with that fundamental rhythm to things about our lives changing over an arc and the things we care about changing over time, some of which we get to connect to and others which we have to let go, we begin to get this concept of change, concept of how we adapt to change. And if we share what works in that with each other, even just by being present with each other, being mindful of each other and the journey, and saying, I'm happy to be with you. I don't need to know the answers to your questions. You know the answers. I can be with you while you look for the answers. That, I would say, is where the amazing things happen in terms of us adapting together. It's by joining together and being present to one another. And also present to the new day, and that with the winter and the things that are learned in each winter comes the spring, a new beginning, a new way of thinking about my world in the way that my world will change, always. And some of those changes will be painful, but they're such good teachers because they're natural to who we are. So I thank you for sharing the morning together. The sun is now risen a little bit, and you can see the birds are still delighting in the new day. And I hope you delight in your new day each day, if you can find that. All right. Thank you. Appreciate spending the time together. I do.
A special thank you to our State of Mind speakers and to you for joining us. More videos and educational resources can be found at 1 in 5's website. If you feel like you or your child is in need of professional support, therapists are available. Please refer to Mindpeace's school-based or community resource page. For a mental health crisis or emergencies, patients and families are encouraged to contact their current mental health provider first. This allows the mental health provider who knows your child best to provide support and direction. If your child does not have a mental health provider and they are experiencing a non-life-threatening mental health crisis, you are encouraged to contact the Psychiatric Intake Response Center at Cincinnati Children's Hospital Medical Center. 513-636-4124. Call 911 or go to the emergency department if you are experiencing a medical emergency, a life-threatening mental health crisis, or are directed to go there by a medical provider. This will help limit the spread of COVID-19 in our community and allow our emergency departments to care for patients with the most critical needs first.